Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Welcome to the 23rd Annual Civil Rights Conference, and whoever said February was the shortest month, because we are extending this thing. This is the final event of this year's conference, and I also want to say thank you to our friends around the country who are watching us virtually via YouTube. This has been a wonderful conference, in my opinion, and I hope you've been inspired and invigorated by our speakers, our workshops, and artistic presentations. We hope you've been motivated to stand in the gap for someone else. It's been my pleasure to serve as the chair of this year's planning committee, and there's a remarkable team behind all that you have seen the last 5 weeks. So I would like for my fellow committee members to please stand. Dominique Crockett, Alicia Melton, Dr. Danny Pirtle, Cameron Eccles, who's in class. He can't be with us tonight. Dr. Zavita Jones, Austin Farrell, and our student Justice Watkins. So these are the people who have made this event happen. So thank you all. Tonight's event has been a long time coming. We've had a couple of hiccups along the way, an ice storm and some other things that have sort of delayed this, this event tonight. But we have one of the country's leading voices in advocacy. When it comes to holding people accountable, you can count on this woman's voice. And tonight's event will be a casual conversation. We're doing it a little bit differently tonight. And this conversation will be co-moderated by Dr. Danny Pirtle, who teaches in our criminal justice department, and Hannah Bilger, who is one of our graduate students. Yeah. So again, thank you all for coming out tonight. You are in for a treat. I will now ask Lauren Davis to please come and introduce our speaker.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lauren Davis. I'm a junior broadcast journalism major from Memphis, Tennessee, and today I have the honor of introducing Tamika Mallory. Tamika D. Mallory is a groundbreaking, award-winning social justice leader and movement strategist. She has risen to become the most sought-after voice, sought-after influential activist of her generation. Her committed work, advocacy, frontline bravery and heroic servitude continue to inspire millions around the world to get involved in the fight for racial and social equality. Through the impact and gravity of her voice, Tamika Mallory speaks truth to power no matter the consequences. She is hailed as one of the most influential Black voices of our generation. Ms. Mallory has served as the youngest ever executive director of the National Action Network. She is instrumental in the creation of the New York City Crisis Management System, an official gun violence prevention program that awards nearly $27 million each year in prevention organizing each year. Tamika Mallory made history as she helped galvanize the largest single-day demonstration, the 2017 Women's March on Washington, and served as one of its four national co-chairs. She co-founded Until Freedom, an intersectional social justice organization that serves as a clearinghouse for organizers, activists, movement attorneys, artists, celebrities, and formerly incarcerated individuals. She is also the co-host of the newly launched podcast, Street Politicians, alongside activist Mysone Lennon on iHeartRadio's Black Effect Network. Ms. Mallory has been honored as one of Times Magazine's 100 most influential people and was featured as Fortune Magazine's list of the world's greatest leaders. Her deliberative vision has moved and motivated a new generation of spirited and engaged activists. Never hiding behind a keyboard, Tamika Mallory is peerless, a streetwise lightning bolt of freedom, justice, and equality. The title of her forthcoming book is State of Emergency. It is a reflective piece birthed from her urgent declaration she made in the unforgettable speech during the George Floyd protests in Minneapolis in 2020. We are thrilled to have Tamika Mallory join us for the 2023 UT Martin Civil Rights Conference as one of our keynote speakers. She is also my soror. Please join me in a Skyhawk welcome for Tamika Mallory.
Uh-oh. Doesn't this need to be turned on?
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. Good evening. Oh, no. Good evening. All right. I came from New York City this morning. I need a little bit of energy from this audience. Thank y'all so much for having me today.
So I want to begin by making this sort of a personal moment, if I will. I am really honored to be here with Tamika Mallory and all that she's done, and you'll have the opportunity to hear about that in just a second. But I want to take an opportunity to celebrate Hannah Bilger for taking on this load. Please recognize her. So, as Professor Giles indicated, this is more of a casual sort of conversation. We will certainly have the opportunity at the end for you all to engage in a few questions, and we hope that you will do so. But I would like to begin just by asking, very often the media and other pundits tell us who we are. So you have been identified as a social justice activist and so forth. How would you describe who you are in this work that you do?
Oh, thank you. I've never had anyone ask me that question. I guess first of all, again, I just want to say thank you. I'm happy that I was able to be here after all of the changes that we went through to make this happen, and it feels good to just be in this space, and seeing my sisters, my sorors here makes me feel really, really excited. So again, thank you. So I would describe myself as being an organizer. And a lot of people say, well, what's the difference between an activist and an organizer? Anyone can be an activist. If you care about a topic, an issue, you could be on social media, presenting your ideas and giving them hell for whatever it is that you feel about an issue. Anyone can show up at a march. Anyone can support financially a cause and allow that to be their form of activism. But organizing is a different level. It requires you to be able to make things happen, to bring people together, to produce events, to deal with a lot of different personalities, to be able to produce campaigns and otherwise. And I feel like being an organizer is not just in one area of my life. It's not just because I do, social justice work, that's where I'm an organizer exclusively. I'm an organizer in all areas of my life, whether it be in my business affairs, whether it just be at home dealing with my son who's now 23. I now have a granddaughter who turned 5 months today, actually. And, even dealing with my son for all of these years, the one skill that he probably would say I have that I do well, because there's some stuff he would say you just don't do that well. Funny joke is one day, and it's been probably about 10 years now, he probably was about 13 years old, we were having a conversation and people were talking about having more kids. I've never wanted more kids, but it just happened to come up this day. And my son turns to me and he says, "Mom, you're my best friend. You're a good mom. You do everything for me, but please don't have any more children because this is not for you." So I learned a long time ago that is not my area. But one area that I would say he knows that I excel in is organizing our family, having a structure where we get things done, we do activities together. My parents, I help to organize their lives. So I think that that particular skill is one that transcends all areas of my life, and I also know that being an organizer means that I have way more responsibility than the average person who just says, I'm an activist who cares about education, who cares about community and policing and those things. So I would say that that's the title I would use to describe me and my work.
Okay. So with all your projects and commitments to social justice, we, the public, tend to focus on just the work and not the toll that it may take on that person. So is there something that you feel guilty of or were guilty of?
Well, first of all, I am not good at organizing my self-care life. So I would say that is one area where I fail terribly, because once I'm in on something, I can't put the phone down, can't stop, thinking about the issue, obsessing over it, not being able to sleep because I'm, worrying about, decoding the problem, if you will. So that's been an area that I have had to be very intentional about working to address. And moreover, I've had to be intentional about therapy and having advisors, mentors, and friends who are literally accountability partners for me to say it's time to stop. I have friends that know, as I'm getting older, I'm now 42 years old, my weight is no longer going down. Like, that's just not a thing anymore. But there was a time when people knew I was stressed because I started getting really, really small. I would be 98 pounds, not really eating. And there are actual pictures of me, especially during the Women's March when I was helping to organize that. There are pictures of me where you see skin and bones. And it's because I forfeit food when I'm in these crises for just being everywhere I'm supposed to be or everywhere I think I'm supposed to be. And I now have accountability partners that realize in the past where they saw it happening and maybe they didn't know what to say or maybe they just thought it was normal, now they know that when I get in that space, it's really unhealthy and it's very, very dangerous. And so those partners will check in and be like, you look different, you don't look like you're sleeping. And my manager, she'll say, you sent me an email at 12 a.m., 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and 6 a.m. So I'm just trying to figure out, when did you sleep if you were communicating all night long? And that helps me to say, I'm not taking care of myself properly. So I certainly am guilty of, not focusing or not understanding that the work it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. But, I would also say that in the talking about my son, that's why at 13 he was like, you're not good for this, because I'm like supposed to be at the soccer field. I don't know where the hell I was, like I'm on my way, I'm coming, I'm trying to get there, but I'm on 10 conference calls. He's playing flag football. He's like, Mom, did you see it? And I'm, oh, sorry, I missed it. And he suffered as a result of that. He really did. As a young kid, he needed me, especially his father is deceased. His father was shot and killed when my son was 2. So he never had 2 parents. So there was no one else aside from his grandparents to like pick up the slack. It was all on me. And I was unable to focus because I was so career driven. And then the career that I chose is one that deals with trauma, and it deals with, it's a never ending cycle that we're in. And you could literally work 24 hours a day if you're invested in trying to solve for the injustice that happens in our nation. And so my son became, I became the auntie or sister of all these other families. And he suffered and was lost in the midst of it. So I certainly am one that is, guilty. It's a few things that I could say, that I've been guilty of just not understanding the toll that my work takes on everybody around me, including myself. And I've just end this point by saying, even though I'm better at it because I literally almost died, it's still not good. Like I walked in and we didn't even get to say a full hello because I was on the phone trying to get a kid out of jail, you know? So like there is, and I feel like the tool, white supremacy, the tool is the tool that is used to keep us all over the place and constantly focused on the wheel. You know, that is actually something that I don't know that we take the time to sit back and realize that as white supremacy operates, it takes us away from our families, and having just successful, happy, being able to smile is difficult for some activists I know around this country, that when I see them, I can tell that they're not experiencing Black joy because their lives are dedicated to being sad, fighting, crying, and dealing with so many terrible emotions. So we have to be very, very conscious of that as we want to do this work.
You spoke about trauma, and your work really focuses a lot on trauma, especially from the Black experience. And unfortunately, the nation had an opportunity again to see police brutality at its worst with Tyree Nichols about a month and a half ago or so. Can you speak to this idea that you address in regards to Black trauma, and at what point was that transformational moment for you where you felt it was partly your responsibility to help us understand and address those issues?
Man, I mean, the issue of Black trauma is so real on so many different levels. You know, it's not just being an activist, but again, being a mom, being a friend, right? I feel every day nervous about so many different issues. And I know that, you know, everybody feels it, but as a Black woman, we take on a major toll when worrying about our communities, our children. You know, your husband leaves the house, you're concerned about whether or not he's gonna make it to work and back safely. Your children, you're constantly feeling, you know, that anxiety of not just what could happen to them based upon the police, but look at what we're dealing with now with Shanquella Robinson. Here's a young woman that went on vacation with her friends and she was beaten to death. You know, it's we're dealing with so much trauma all the time. It's on overload. And part two of your question was, when did I decide? Okay. And so I didn't decide, it chose me. You know, one thing I will tell people is I have tried to run from this work many times over. In fact, when we talk about organizing being the main skill that I have that I think works in all these spaces, that means that as a great organizer, I could go off and make millions of dollars doing something different, right? Like, and I have attempted. I've said, there's no way I'm going to keep on, first of all, working with Black folks who sometimes we are the hardest people to try to help because of all the trauma that we deal with. And I have wanted to walk away. I've been attacked. I've been ridiculed. I've been in the newspaper as, you know, I remember waking up one day and it was like 40 articles in one genre of papers, and the total number of stories that came out about me overnight was 400 stories saying that my career was done, it was over for me. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, if they don't want me, I can go do X thing. You know, I could go work for Coca-Cola. I have friends over there. I could go, well, actually, I found that that's not true, because my friends that work at all of these corporations are like, we love you, but you can't come work over here. You know, you can't, you know, at this point, I couldn't go, you know, but I now am learning stocks. I'm an event planner by trade. And so I know how to, if I come into a room and there's flowers on the table, before I leave, if they're not right, I fixed them up and moved it around and tried to make a good presentation. This is just something that comes second nature to me. So I could go off and do all these things, and yet I'm still in this, and it seems like the only place where I feel my purpose and my passion are aligned, right? And so when I didn't choose the work, it was chosen for me because of what happened to my son's father. Now, Prior to that, I was a child of the movement. So just like a child in church, you know, you have to go. I don't know how many of y'all, I always ask people to raise your hand if on Sundays going to church was not optional. You knew you had to, okay. See, right, we down south, right? So you know, I know what this is, my family, my mama's from Alabama, my daddy's from North Carolina. So it didn't matter where I went, whether it was going to visit family members or at home in New York, Sundays, we was going to church, period. Well, the movement was that way for us as well. Saturdays is when, in Harlem especially, all the groups met, you know, all the black activists, the scholars, they would get together on Saturdays, sometimes at the rallies that my organization at that time hosted, but it was street meetings. Like everybody was outside talking Black power, and my parents were deeply involved. So when I was a kid, I felt like I was being robbed of my childhood. You know, I was like watching movies like New Jack City and Paid in Full and Belly and thinking, I want to just marry a drug dealer. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I need bamboo earrings and a leather jacket. Like, what's the problem here? And my parents were like, no, we're going over here with these people dressed up in African clothes with these big, you know, earrings, and they were all fist up. And I'm like, this is hard. This can't be my life. And, you know, I went through that. I ran away from home. I did all the things to try to separate myself. And then my son's father was murdered. And, you know, I was 18 years old when I had my son. I think I was about 20 years old when his father was killed. And it was like that moment, and I often describe it as when you're in church and you're very little, you know, you hear the music, you hear the preacher preaching, and it's like, okay, you're looking at mom like she's really excited today. You know that there's a spirit, but you don't really feel it until you go through the first heartbreak, or somebody close to grandmama passes away, or something happens, and then when the pastor starts preaching and the music comes on, you like, oh yes, that's my song, you know, sing, pastor, you know, and you experience it when you have life's troubles, and you know, you deal with life's challenges, and that's what happened to me in the movement. I used to be sitting there like, oh my God, when is this gonna be over? But then when my son's father was murdered, I was leading the conversation. I was asking my parents, like, you know, they have a rally going on today on 135th Street. Y'all not coming? You know, I gotta go, I gotta be on time. And I got more involved because once he was killed, I realized, looking at his life, understanding that his parents were perpetual drug abusers, they had the disease of addiction, nobody tried to help them. There was no opioid crisis response that now applies mainly to white children. There was no response like that for black kids or black parents or black people who were on crack and heroin. They was being thrown in jail. And then when they got to jail, there was no program. They just got put back on the streets, and the cycle went back right around again. And even though he had great grandparents and a family that wanted to help him, there's nothing like having your mother and father present. And beyond that, when they show up and they are drug addicted and struggling, that makes it even worse. And so he was caught in that cycle. And by the time I'm in a relationship with him, we're 16 and whatever age he was, I didn't realize he had mental health issues, right? From everything that he dealt with. He definitely had mental health trauma. No one ever assessed it and what do we call it? They never diagnosed it, right? They never put a name or face to it. He just had to go out into the world and try to cope, and he didn't. He didn't cope well, and eventually he got himself in trouble, and the people who were supposed to be his friends, they shot and killed him. They left him in a ditch for 2 weeks before he was discovered. We never got to see him. He was completely decomposed by the time they found his body, and that's the end of it. That's the end of the story. So once I had to sit with that, you can do two things. You can sit and feel sorry for yourself and soak and just, you know, go into a life of misery, or you can look at it and use it in some way to inspire, to make change, to help society, to use the story for positive benefit, and I chose to lean that way. And so, of course, because of that, I was already in the right room, because my parents, they were already taking me to the space, and they didn't know that this would eventually happen, but they didn't know that as a black person in America, you need to be in a space that helps to facilitate a potential situation that could happen to you, where you've got to be ready to fight. You've got to be ready to organize. You've got to be ready to be active. You've got to be ready just to have a place of sanity, a place where you can go with a uniqueness that no one else outside of your community can understand. So they fostered a space for it. And that's how I ended up in the movement. And then it was no longer my mama and daddy's thing. It was my own.
And so you mentioned about mental health. And so, of course, you also mentioned the church. So when did you know that you couldn't pray it away or leave it at the altar? And how can black community get away from that?
Wow. Well, I guess I didn't think I could pray it away, but I knew I could pray through it, right? And I think that there is a difference. Praying through it means that there's action that has to happen. You have to be taking steps while you're praying. You can't just lay down and believe that because you said a prayer, it's just going to be, mysteriously, whatever your issue will be mysteriously gone. That doesn't work that way. Praying through it means, I'm taking a step and I'm believing that my faith, the hope that I have and my understanding of life and even death, that because I have this faith, I will find a way. There will be a path forward for me to make a difference, and also, again, just to maintain your own sanity. And so, I think that our community, especially our churches, and I am very close to a number of pastors around the country just because of the work that I do, and all of them are social justice pastors or preachers or clergymen, right? So their congregations are in the community. And that's the only type of church that I could be a part of, and I suggest that black folks who are in this room, and not just black folks, anybody that's in this room, that you go to a church or you're in some type of organization, if it is not focused on what we can do to reach outside the doors and try to help those people who would not show up at church, right? So if all you're doing in your organized community is supporting people who look like you, who are sitting right next to you, all you're doing is giving scholarships to kids that the grandmother went to the church, her mama went to the church, the whole family is here, and the child probably doesn't really need the scholarship anyway, but I'm not saying don't give it to them. I'm just saying, y'all know what I'm talking about, right? If that's all we're doing, we're not really doing the work. Your organized unit, and the reason why I'm very conscious about that is because everybody doesn't just go to church. Some people, they're in a group, they're in a sorority, they may be going to the mosque, but whatever it is that wherever you are, where you're meeting with other people and claiming that you are following the principles of the word, the scripture, it requires us to step outside of the doors of a building and be about the work of the community. And so that's the way that I look at it. It's not that I don't, because I love to get the inspiration of going to church, but I also love when they say when the church is over, the singles ministry is meeting about what they can do over here, and we're gonna feed the hungry on Tuesday, we're gonna be a part of this protest. On this side, you can organize. That is, for me, the only type of spiritual connection I want, one that goes beyond the church. And I'll wrap this up here and just say that my organization, Until Freedom, one of the things that we constantly say, and I know you can appreciate this, when we meet, we are always asking ourselves, as privileged individuals, because we are, right? Like everybody sitting in this room is privileged, whether you have, a lot of money in your pocket today or not, whether you have a house or not, the mere fact that you made it in this space where you could actually communicate with somebody that might be able to help you, you could build a thing, you can get the education, you're in this room to hear this conversation, that's a privilege. There are people in our communities that will never have access to these spaces. They will not be accepted in these spaces. They don't even know that this is happening. They can't even get the access. We think we post something on social media and everybody knows about it. That is not true. There are people who don't have internet. They are sharing one phone or one computer in their household so that their kids can go to school. They don't know, they don't have information. No one is teaching them or telling them about how to advance themselves. they pretty much live in food deserts and deserts of everything else, deserts of info, right? When what we do is we look at ourselves as a privileged group of people and say, who else needs to be at the table that is actually impacted by whatever this issue may be? So if we're talking about gun violence, yes, my son's father was murdered, and I can speak from, one perspective in terms, I lost him and what that means and what I've gone through. But there are people somebody got shot last month, right? There are people who could potentially be a shooter. There's somebody who is a shooter or has been a shooter, just released from prison, has a felony conviction. How do we get them to be at the center of whatever we're doing, whatever organizing conversation we have? Because those are the people who actually have the solutions. And we often think that because we read a book, because we, are in, we're in the room, we know the people, we have studied something, and even sometimes we have lived experience, we believe that that makes us an expert. But the true experts are the people who live the crisis every day. And I think that that's the way that we address the issue that you spoke to in terms of, how do we not just think we can pray about it and let it go? No, we actually have to engage the people and then walk outside of our worlds and find out like who are the true victims and how do we support them in becoming victors.
If I was in the Baptist church, I'd probably get an amen right now. I would drop the mic, but I got a couple questions I want to ask. So beginning of the Civil Rights Conference, I'm trying to show my students who we have invited to campus. So I find a video of yours, and as you may know from your research about UT Martin, we are a predominantly white institution. So about 35 of my students, probably 30 of them identify as white, Caucasian. So you can imagine what response I got, verbal and otherwise, when I clicked on your video and I said, "She's coming." And I knew from my experience in living and working in white spaces that sometimes even saying white supremacy triggers certain individuals, and it causes
That's why I say it all the time.
a lot of discomfort. If I was in a Baptist church. So I would really like for you to explain to those who are in discomfort when we talk about how challenging it is for us to live, work in white spaces.
Oh my.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that feels like in your?
Oh my. You trying to get me in trouble.
No.
This is an ambush.
Not at all, not at all.
No. So first of all, it's interesting that the people who are often very vocal, the white people who are often very vocal about how uncomfortable it makes them feel to hear the terms like white supremacy and, and racism and all of that. Those people are generally folks that are like, but I want to see change in our society. Like, I'm with you in the fight, but why do we have to use those terms? And I often say, problem number one is check your own bias as a white person. Before you can help me, you got to check you and decode some things, because if the term white supremacy offends you, we shouldn't even get started with what I plan to say day 3 of us knowing one another, right? Because I'm really trying to, I'm uncomfortable every second. Like, I live an uncomfortable life. Like, I wake up in the morning and it's uncomfortable because either I'm dealing with family calling me from Alabama, North Carolina, wherever, with issues, with, loved ones, dealing with real live situations that are clearly happening to them because they're black, and especially black and living in the South, right? And I'll just give you an example. Yesterday in the morning, I don't know, I guess it was probably about maybe 10 o'clock, having a conversation with a family member, and she's like, can I just connect you, please, to another? Yeah, no problem. She puts the other one. Child is 10 years old, in school, gets into a conversation with another white kid. The white kid calls him a name. The black kid gets upset, who happens to be my little cousin. I've never met him, but he's my little cousin. He gets upset. He responds to the kid. They throw my little cousin out. Not the person who called him a name. It's my little cousin that gets thrown out because they said he was too aggressive, right? And so this is my morning. I'm starting the day with a situation that's like, how did they just throw him out of the school? And then, of course, the school, once I called and said I just wanted to try to, be in a conference with the family, the school says, oh, we made a mistake. Oh, we made a mistake, okay. So this is that's a small example of your morning. By the time you get to the night, you're dealing with so-and-so got shot, this happened over here, Florida is banning certain education, certain classes being banned over here, so-and-so got fired because she won't cut her hair off because she's wearing dreads. All day long, I'm uncomfortable. So when you and I are sitting here and you tell me you want to help me with these things because you're like, something has to change. The world is just not right. And then I start talking to you about white supremacy and that bothers you, you're not ready. You're not ready. And I tell people this all the time. Actually, I wrote about it in State of Emergency. I wrote about how often white people approach me to work with me who have done absolutely no work on themselves in their communities, with their own families, but they're ready. So I'll give you another example. Women's March. Amazing, amazing, amazing historic gathering of women. Over 5 million people worldwide. Now that they are, as history moves forward, they begin to calculate numbers and find more people in pockets in different places. So 5 million was the last number I know, but now there are reports coming out to say that there may have been up to 7 million people around the world. Largest single day protest in American history. I was one of those who helped to organize that. Incredible. No one will ever take from us what we accomplished, but we almost died doing it because white women decided that racism, not all white women, of course, let me be very clear, but there were a number, a lot of them within the Women's March space that decided, that racism started with Donald Trump. And they were like, oh my God, we can't let this happen. How could this be? How did he get elected? Well, listen, your auntie and your grandmother and your mother maybe even voted for him, and y'all didn't do the work. No one had those conversations at Labor Day, because Labor Day is in, September? Election is in November. Did you have uncomfortable conversations at your family barbecue to say, hey, we can't be out here voting for a racist, fascist, sexist man? No. But now you want to organize a march. And so I was in space with them. And the level of microaggressions that I dealt with, people having things to say about everything, just how I showed up every day. Why does your face look like that? Like you're so mad. Why are you speaking so loud? What does race have to do with women's issues? Why do we have to talk about race in the conversation around equal pay? Why do we have to talk about gun violence? What does that have to do with women? Everything we did, we received major pushback from white women who were extremely uncomfortable, even though they were supposed to be fighting against an uncomfortable issue. So I would say, how do what we go through and of course the problem is that once we get to a point where we as Black people respond to it, that's it. Like now you're the angry Black woman. Look over here, the Amen corner, that's where they at over there. You're the angry Black woman. How dare you bring this up? Why would you even raise this issue? Now they're crying, and white tears are very dangerous. Let me just say to all the white people who are in this room, just know that when you cry, especially as a white woman, it can literally get a Black person killed. Literally. a black person can die based upon the tears of a white person, and particularly a white woman. And I dealt with white tears that had my back up against the wall so much that I was 98 pounds, right? I was sick. I was sick. I was depressed. And then sometimes I probably was like, you know what, if I just died, this would just all go away. My family was sick as a result of it, and it was all because I was in an integrated space. It does not mean that working with black people is not hard. I don't want to, because I would be disingenuous to sit here and make it seem like all you got to do is just work with black people and everything is going to be wonderful. That is not true. They are laughing like you, listen, no, it is not true. Working with black people can be difficult as well. But again, if a black person says that I hurt them, people leave us to figure it out on our own, right? For instance, look at Shanquella Robinson. Let's go back to an example. Shanquella Robinson was more than likely, we saw her being beaten, but until the investigation, they'll say you can't say they killed her, right? But they killed her in that house. The people don't really care about that. But if it had been that a white girl was killed, Natalie Holloway is an example of a white girl who went missing, right? And I keep saying everywhere, all we want is the white girl missing treatment for Shanquella. That if a white girl was in the same situation where there was a video that shows her being beaten, and then the next thing you know, her neck and spine are broken, and she goes home dead, there is no way that someone would not have been arrested at this point. No way you could tell me that. And every white person I talk to says, you're right. It's no way that they would not have arrested someone. So I'm just saying, in black spaces, it's difficult. We hurt one another. We gossip and backbite, and we're jealous of one another. We've got egos. We got all of that. But if a black woman cries because a black woman hurt her feelings, nobody really cares. But if a white woman cries in the workplace or in any space where there is some level of authority because a black person has seemingly done something to them, there are consequences, and those consequences hurt. So people just need to, that is, in my opinion, when white people are trying to do work, rather than organizing the march with me, that's the organization that needs to happen, that's the messaging. Hey, we need to check how we show up when we get upset with a black woman. We gotta be careful not to to present ourselves in a way that is harmful to other communities. So hopefully that answers you.
Whew, that's a whole lot. Let me say this. I did go off script, totally off script,
But yeah.
totally personal. And then, again, I apologize, but oftentimes it takes a representative to speak. And boy, what a representative I have on this stage. If I was in a Baptist church. So I do apologize sincerely, but if there was a space where those things need to be said, those feelings need to be felt, and the fact that I'm in this space every day, I couldn't think of a more perfect time for that to happen. So I really appreciate you for indulging me in that answer.
And so you talked about space. So how do you define a safe space, or how does it look like to you?
I think, because the other thing is let's not present ourselves as being perfect, right? Anybody, not just white folks, black folks, there's anybody. We're not perfect. We don't know all the time. We're often, what's the word? I want to make sure that I say this properly. We are often very unconscious of the things we say and the ways we make other people feel, just because, as we move through life, sometimes you move quickly. You say, you walk in the room, you're frustrated, you've been through a lot, you may not speak, or you might snap at somebody. We often do things like that, and it makes people feel uncomfortable. What makes the space safe is being able to say, hey, this made me feel uncomfortable, and not automatically become, oh, this is a trigger, and I feel attacked. but being able to discuss. It's like in your home, in order to be, especially people in this room who are either married or in relationships, there's no way to have a successful relationship without being able to communicate about things that hurt, because you're not going to be happy every single day. And so that's what makes the space safe, is that I can come to you and tell you that something bothered me or made me feel uncomfortable, and we can work through it without you feeling that I have now attacked you and you now have to figure out a way to remove me from ever existing. One of the biggest problems that I experienced when I was in the Women's March was that, like, if we would say, okay, these talking points, even to our own PR people, they work for us, and we like, these talking points don't really represent the issues in our community, and people are like, but that sounds angry. It is. We're angry. Like, let's just put that on the table. So let's stop even using that as some derogatory term. We are angry. Black people living in America are angry. And guess what? As a white person, seeing what we go through, you should be angry too. So we ought to all be together on this one thing we can agree on. We're angry. And you know what? When I meet with people, I sit down and say, I just want you to know, I want to get in front of this conversation and let you know I'm angry. So I'm probably going to curse. You know, I'm probably going to cut you off while you're speaking, and you say some bullshit that I don't agree with. I'm going to be like, that's bullshit. And I just want you to know, when we leave here, we can get a drink together, we can be fine. But right now, I just finished watching Tyree Nichols get beat to death, and it just doesn't mean the same thing to me as it does to you. It just doesn't. So please don't show up more mad than I am, because you can't possibly be. You know, so a safe space means having people who understand that. A safe space, let's take it away from, you know, dealing with the issue of white people and black people, and let's just talk about black men and women, right? Sometimes we as black women have to understand that black men is just going to show up mad about certain things in a way that we don't understand. And our job is to provide space for them to be angry about it, to maybe need to be quiet. Maybe they don't want to answer our 90,000 questions about how we feel and and you need to communicate. It might not be a good time for that. And we have to foster environments for people to process however they process. But then the reciprocal energy of a safe space is to know, okay, I've been quiet for 2 hours. I probably need to go ahead and say, hey, I'm hurt. You know, I'm not feeling well. I need some time. Communication is key, and I think anytime you foster a space or an environment where people feel like they can communicate and not flip the entire room, then and sometimes that might be an elevated voice. And I think that's one of the things that people don't understand about us as a people and our culture, is that we get excited. So people will see, you know, black folks yelling and going, you know how we do, and they'll be like, oh my God, they're fighting over there. Like, it's really about to go down. I don't know, but I think that Jenny is about to really kill, you know, whoever, like, it's bad. But it really, that's just the way we communicate. You know, it's just the way we communicate. We yell and scream and to get our point out. But once we finish that on the other side, we know how, it's like a processing period for us. And, you know, and because people don't often know that around us, it makes it difficult to have integrated space, because they don't know what it looks like. And then we're made unsafe when people, you know, make assumptions about how far an argument is going to go between the two of us, you know, so to speak. So I think that that's what people have to learn. They have to learn how to create environments where people feel comfortable being themselves and not have to go into every room changing who you are so that other people are comfortable. That's definitely not safe. And by the way, I'm not about making people feel comfortable. That's not something that I do. When I'm in environments, I try to be as Tamika as possible, so that everybody who I come into community with, and I want to say this, but everybody that I come into community with, they know she's consistent. She's consistent. Something happened, we know Tamika's going to be on 10,000 about it. But I also know that that does not mean that I can disrespect people. And it's a balance that is not making people feel comfortable, but it is making sure they feel respected, and that's important. So, you know, it's something you learn as you get older, how to be in an environment, how you go to work every day, dealing with different types of people and make them feel respected, but also let them know we gonna have to be a little uncomfortable in order for us to make change. Nothing that has ever been accomplished was done comfortably.
I want to go back to a question we asked earlier. You were talking about how often the academics, the pundits, are considered the experts because we've studied, we've done research, so on and so forth. But I really value your position that those who are experiencing those things are truly the experts. Could you share with us some things, major takeaways with those experts who have that lived experience? What are some things that you have taken from those experts that you've encountered?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think what we were just talking about, I'll say really briefly, is one of those things, just how to communicate when being frustrated has come from some of my mentors, some of the people who've been in this work for a long time. Like, I'll explain to somebody, you know, they're mad at me because I went to a meeting and I said, flip the damn table, tear everything up, burn it all down, and they're like, and I'm with the problem. Like, I just felt like that was just, you know, that's how I felt. And you can't say burn because, you know, that has a certain implication, right? So you learn how to maneuver, you learn how to use your words, you learn how to use your frustration, and you learn how to be effective in organizing people, to getting people to gather and to move in a certain direction because they feel comfortable with it. And leadership requires you to really have a very, very strategic communication style. And I think my experts in my life, the mentors, the people around me, they taught me a lot about how to communicate, when to press buttons, when to pull back, when to say nothing and allow just your presence and or your absence to be the communication. You know, and so that's been one thing. I think also, at one point, you know, I found myself every time I got to a podium.
I think you turned your microphone off. I'm going to swap out for you.
Wait, okay, yeah, well, that's fine. Okay, sorry. I was turning it off so it wouldn't make noise, but I'll do better. I found myself, every time I stepped to a podium, I yelled every word, right? Because it was the reason to yell. Like, you know, the whole damn system is guilty as hell. Like, I was a protester at the press conference when I should have been a strategist and, you know, one that's able to articulately deliver the ask. What is the demand? And people can't always hear the demand over you yelling. And so I've had people say some real difficult things to me about that. Like, you know, there's a time for it and there's a time not to do it. And I remember one time, like, being prevented from speaking at a rally. And I was like, damn, like, why didn't they I was ready. Like, I had, you know, 4 pages ready to go. And I was like, maybe they knew I had 4 pages and that was the problem. But it wasn't. It was, you know, later on, it was brought to my attention that this just wasn't the space for, like, the angry black woman speech. And so I started to figure out how to present the same exact points without raising my voice at all. And as I did that, and some people in this room are probably like, no, I just saw you speak the other day, you was yelling. No. But as I did that, I found myself being invited to more rooms, right? So I'll tell you one thing about experts and opinions. You got to be able to take it. Because it hits hard when someone comes to you and they say, you know, you yell too much or you frowning, you know, all the time. You look like you just walking in, and these are not people who are trying to be comfortable. They're just trying to tell me there's a group of people who will not get your message with your presentation. So you need multiple strategies for how you can communicate. And that wasn't a good feeling for me at first, because I thought I was doing something. And then I found out that I was turning off a whole group of people that actually have done the work and they really want to come along, but they just don't take the information in a cookie cutter way. So I think from my perspective, the experts around me that have helped me to, one, sit down and focus on study more than talking, and have also worked on my strategic mind frame of how to approach the rooms that I'm going in and the spaces, the podiums that I'm speaking from. Those things have been the most helpful in terms of my development. I'm not sure if that's the question that you're asking. Yeah, that's been the most helpful in terms of my development, but I've had to be very open to receive very critical advice that doesn't always feel good. One of my mentors is the wife of the widow of Marion Barry, the Honorable Marion Barry, who is the mayor in Washington, D.C. And if you don't know Marion Barry, you should do some research on who he is. This is a man who was the mayor in Washington. He went through a lot of things. He was caught in a hotel room with a prostitute using drugs and still won his re-election to become mayor again because of the work that he did in the community, because of, the jobs that he helped people to get. The summer youth program that he had was one of the best in the nation. All these young folks in D.C. worked because of his strategy, the contracts that he got for black and brown folks. I mean, he just was one of the greatest to ever do it, and the people knew it. So even though he had some vulnerabilities and challenges, when it came time to re-elect him, the people trusted him, and they did so. So she, his wife, and I say that because that gives you an example of the type of people I'm talking about. They rough and tough, this couple, right? And she's one of my mentors. One time I went to her and I was like, oh my God, they're saying all these terrible things about me. The world is coming to an end. After telling me to shut up, which hurt, but I needed it because I was totally melting down. She said to me, I am so excited for you. And I was like, I was never going to talk to her again after that. I'm like, you're excited for me? Are you crazy? Like, they're killing me. And she said, before this incident, they weren't talking about you at all. And now you're on the cover of every newspaper. It might not be for the reason you want it to be for, but God never told you that that's how he would always show up. It will happen in the most mysterious ways, but now people are learning more about you, and they're studying your story. They're studying your position theory of change. So you're still getting your message across. And I was like, wow, it hurt a lot hearing that from my mentor because I wanted her to rub my back and make me feel good. She didn't give me that. She made me feel even worse for a little while. But it ended up that because of the negative press that I received, I ended up making relationships with the very people that they were trying to tear me apart from. And look at me now. So taking advice from the experts is not always easy, but you have to do it.
Now, there's a saying, just get over it. Why can't we just get over it?
I hear just get over it all the time. I hear, and I'll tell you, white folks don't really say that to me. Not really. Most white people that I come into contact with are like, you know what, I see it, I get it, I understand it. I don't know if I feel you should approach it this way, or, it's not me, it wasn't my family, those types of things that are also problematic. But they don't tell me just get over it. It's black people that tell me, oh my God, we're still talking about this. And I often hear specifically from black men, we just need to focus on getting money. Like, don't worry about all of that stuff, you being a victim to the system, nobody gonna keep me down, we just gonna get this money, we gonna, do whatever. And then, some of them are talking about things that are important, investments, real estate, stocks, pooling our resources together. And I often hear from them, you need to just stop talking about racism and oppression and sexism and all of that. Like, those are victim terms. I hear that all the time. But one thing I do know is that if we don't have, it's like what do they say? It's like a compass, right? Like, you've got to be able to look at the picture and see all the things and call it out to know where you're going. You need direction. You need a map. And a map doesn't, it might narrow down its focus to one area when you're dealing with, electronics or whatever. But all the rest of it is still there. You never can get rid of the full scope of everything that's happening. It helps you be able to know the point you're at from west. Was that west? Which side is this? Is this west? Anybody know if this is west?
It's west. Yeah, it's west.
This is west? Okay, west. Look, we know this is north, though, to south, right? You have to know, you got to be able to see your full picture. So when I come into a conversation and I am talking about the history of where women have been, how we don't get paid enough now, we are not paid equally to men, right? It's not enough to tell me, well, let's just get over that and let's just build a new apparatus. Because what happens is we'll build something new and the same practices will follow if we're not looking at the conditions that currently exist and the conditions that came before us. So history is very important to know where you're going, but having an assessment of where you are on the map is very, very necessary. So you can decide if maybe it's not a good idea for us to build something in this direction because we know the challenges that come with that. We have to have certain things in the fabric of what we're trying to build today. And, some people, I think there are a lot of people who struggle with that because, one, it's traumatizing to have to keep reliving it. Like, you don't want to keep talking about it. But it's also difficult because now you got to do something different, and you're aware that it's going to be hard. You're aware that now that I've assessed where we are, it's going to be hard. There are going to be people who are going to fight us. There are issues that we have and that we have as a people that gets in the way of our own progress. And those things it's a difficult conversation to dig into that. And so folks just want to get over it. But what they often find is while we're getting over it, Tyree Nichols is still being beat to death. So there's no way to get past it. You got to actually go through it.
So I will close with this last question, and then we
Close,
will open it up for.
That's it.
Oh, okay. Well, she's good, so we'll keep going. As you may notice, we have several of our NPHC organizations here. We want to acknowledge you guys. Thank you again for joining us. And the theme of this year's conference, Standing in the Gap, really hoping to inspire them to engage. What would you say to them as members of these organizations solely based on service and academic excellence? What would you say to encourage them to get involved? And what should that look like for them?
It's more than letters and colors, brothers and sisters. And I think, again, it's all connected. Because we were just talking about history, right? Knowing how you started, why you started, and then not just continuing tradition, but figuring out how to enhance it. And that's the part that we lack in sometimes, right? Like we know, okay, we hear all the time that our organization was started for service and to help the community, to help others. We hear that and we say it. You say it at every meeting. You say it over and over again. You had to learn it in order to get into whatever organization or affiliation you have. And yet when it comes time to put it into practice and then to look at ways to make it better and stronger, we lack in that little space. And I think that's what we're charged with, right? That first of all, how do we create space for the next generation that teaches them to carry the baton, to carry the torch of service, true service. And then going back to the, what we were talking about earlier, is to serve who? So you've got to be asking, are we providing service? Are we actually helping others? And then who do we need to be helping? And then what are some of the most uncomfortable spaces that we could run into and try to find a way to solve for X? That's tough. I've had to check myself on that many times. Knowing that it's very easy for me to do the things that I'm most comfortable with. So if I go to, go to a group and say we're gonna put baskets together, everybody's gonna show up to do the baskets, and it makes you feel good. You can go on your Instagram page and post the pretty baskets, the food that was in them. You went out into the community and you delivered it. But if you are challenged with demanding that there actually be proper groceries and food in a community, now you've got to actually challenge the political dynamics and challenge the system. And that is where we become uncomfortable. So I think you've got to, when young people come to me and say, how do I know if I'm really doing it? It has to feel in your belly tight, like I'm scared. I'm nervous. I spoke out today at a time when, was it the right thing to do? That's when we know we're actually involved in something that's powerful. When you can feel it in your belly and you know that I've done something today that's gonna piss somebody off, right? That's the challenge. That's what you have to face every single day. It's how uncomfortable can I make myself? And since I'm uncomfortable, damn it, you gotta be uncomfortable too. And I just, I think that when we wear the letters and we wear the colors and we wear the, whatever, the name tag, it's supposed to come with some level of sacrifice. And it's also supposed to benefit another. So if those things are not happening, if you can't seriously sit with yourself in the bathroom and look in the mirror and say, who did it benefit? Who did I serve? How uncomfortable did I get? You might need to reassess what you're involved in.
We in a Baptist church right now.
Please. I'm ready.
So we will now open the floor for questions. If you would just raise your hand, I will come out. Oh, you have one, okay, good. Questions, the floor is open.
Hello, I'm Madison Burton. My question is, so when it comes to bridging the gap and when it comes to the medical field or in healthcare with the unequal rates of death, dangers, even in obstetrics with delivering, you have a higher, chance of dying at the hands of a white doctor. How do we address these situations, I guess, as healthcare professionals that are kind of in a bind? So you have the options where you can speak and be fired and, not be able to support your family, or you can sit back and just kind of watch. What would you say about that?
So a good question, and I'm glad you brought that up because I find myself, I'm radical in my approach to everything, and I know that, and so I have to check myself on this issue very, 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 very intently. That sometimes when I speak, I am not also acknowledging that some people are in positions where they literally just can't, be but so public about their activism, if you will, and that's important. So what I find in those situations is that organizing the people around you or joining groups, because there are lots of organizations of doulas and, you know, Black healthcare providers that do the work you're talking about. They are constantly looking at ways to challenge the system for, you know, the mortality rates and just unfair treatment within the medical system, right, or the medical field. And what happens when you join organizations and networks is that you will find people who can publicly speak, but you can be a part of the infrastructure and have another role. We oftentimes believe that the only way to be an activist or to be active is to be in the forefront or to do what I do, right? What I do gets me death threats. As I mentioned, I'll never be able to just walk up to X corporation and get a job, because once they Google me, I'm out. You know, a few years ago, I was like, I'm not doing anything this holiday season. I'm gonna go work for Saks Fifth Avenue. And I mean, this was like 3 years ago, so it's not a long time. It was the other day. I said I was gonna go work for Saks Fifth Avenue during the holiday and just, you know, wrap gifts. That's all I wanted to do. I thought it would be therapeutic. It was creative. It's something I wanted to do. So I applied for the job. And the people from Saks called me like, sis, you must be kidding me. Like, they literally called me and was like, did you really apply for this? They thought someone stole my identity. And because they were like, we know you don't think that we're getting ready to hire you at Saks. And they said, but you could come in and do a diversity course for us, and we'd love to have you do that. And then that got called off too, because, you know, that was a whole other thing. But nonetheless, the point I'm making is that, you know, I put myself in a firing squad position. Everybody that works with me and for me, they're not in that position. They're not in that role. There are people who support me financially that you all will never hear about. They give to me. They've set up foundations and other things where their names are not present, and they support me, you know, in different ways. You have people who are part of the strategy. I don't ever see them out on the front lines. But when I'm calling at 2 o'clock in the morning, like, I need help with this, or, you know, I need somebody to make a call to a district attorney to see if you can help me get one of my kids out of trouble, those are people that can make those calls that you and I would never hear about. And so the point is that you have to figure out what is the level that you can play, what is the role, where can you lean in, and then exploit that. You know, if it's that you have the ability to do legal work for an organization, do that. If you have the ability to do accounting work for an organization, do that. Don't think that any role that you play is insignificant, because it all makes up the ability for a person who is the speaker, who is the most vocal individual, to be able to get out there. But the point is, you can't do nothing, right? So you have to find a way to do something, and that might also make you feel uncomfortable just by donating $20 every month. I have a woman that sends $50 every 2 weeks to me to help us with our work. And to some people, that may sound like nothing or it ain't a lot. Every time that $50 comes, first of all, it puts a smile on my face that she's so committed that she has it coming out of her check. They literally mail the thing straight from, it's not even coming from her personally. Her job mails me a check for $50 every 2 weeks. So that gives me a lot of encouragement. But also what it tells me is that she doesn't have a lot, right? Because she could have gave me $5,000 and went about her business. But she made a decision that I don't have a lot to give, but I can figure out how to put $50 somewhere. So if she could sacrifice that, then so can I. And I think people don't understand that sometimes as leaders, we just need people to invest in us and make us feel like we're not alone. And that is a big part of how I keep getting up every single day. So, you know, you should go look at Roland Martin's page, where he posted just a few days ago the letters that comes with $20 investments in his network, his news network, and how that keeps him going from week to week. So you got to find even the smallest thing that you can do that makes you feel like, damn, I need this $20. I'm a college student, you know. But hey, I know I can't be the one out there speaking, so I'm going to give this to somebody who might just need to get lunch today, but while they are working on planning whatever it is that they're trying to organize.
Hello, my name is Jalen McDougall, and I just had a question because I know you spoke about mental health and also filtering yourself when you're speaking to others. So how do you feel, or how do you cope with not being perceived in a good light, if that makes sense? Like, because you told me you filter yourself, but even when you filter yourself, sometimes you're still not perceived in a good way.
Oh no, I don't care what I do. They don't like me.
Yeah.
And that's okay with me because I had to accept it because I got to, look, I'm too far out here now. Like, you know, I took it too far and now I can't go back. But on the serious side, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that it doesn't hurt, because
So
it does.
how do you cope with that mentally?
You have your days. I'm not going to give you a good answer that just makes the room feel good, because it wouldn't be honest. I have my days. Some days I feel, I go, and that stupid cell phone, this right here it could kill you. You got to put it down. You got to put it down, because last night I posted a video of something that BET is doing, and it was really good. Like, I watched a news segment that they did, and it was really, really powerful. And I posted it and was like, this is going to be great, blah, 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 blah. And then I went back to my comment section, and it was in shambles. People was in there like, oh, you over there working for the devil. They not black owned. What's wrong with you? Yeah. I mean, they were going off. And I was like, damn, like, there was a news segment on some really important topics. And how did this happen? Like, and I know that's not exactly what you're talking about, but I just want to, help you to see that sometimes it's minute. It's a small thing where people just mad, and I'm just like, damn, like, I tried to do the right thing and then it didn't work out. So you go to sleep thinking, you're like, damn. Some days I wake up and I say something and people don't like it, and I'm like, oh, well, I don't care. Some days I cry, I'm just like, this hurts a lot. So every single day it's a different feeling, and you kind of go, but remember, I take you back to what I told you about the tool of white supremacy, right? It is to make me the enemy versus the system, right? This is what people do. They go on my page, they see something that I said, and I become the enemy, instead of it being the system that is causing all of these challenges that we face. They're mad at me because I voted for Joe Biden. Well, what was I going to do, vote for Donald Trump? Like, what? Oh, not vote. I guess they say you shouldn't have voted at all. Yeah, but how is that going to work for the policies that come down that impact my community? So nothing that I do is right with everybody. And I'm talking about our people. I'm not talking about outside influences. I'm talking about our people. Nothing that I do is right with everybody. And some days it hurts. Some days I don't care. Other days I'm just perplexed. Some days I need a nap. Some days, I just need to shut everything off. But what I've learned through therapy is whichever one of those feelings I need, or whichever way I need to lean, and don't worry about what people will think because you didn't fight back, and what will people think because you didn't stay online arguing, or what people will think because you didn't show up at an event. Every time that I need to stop to take space for myself, I have to do it. And I suggest that, on just a much more basic tip, I think one of the things that we as black women have to understand is that the nature of who we are and our magic, the world doesn't like us, but they want everything we have. So you have to get yourself comfortable in knowing that it's really about if you like you, not them, because they are going to disappoint you every day. You got to like you. And once you like you, and you know that whatever you're doing, you have the best intention in how you approach life, you'll be okay. You'll get through from day to day, and make sure you have a therapist, because that's necessary if you intend to be, if you just want to be black in America, you need a therapist.
Thank you.
Oh,
Did-
here's this gentleman.
Did we have someone in the back? Okay.
Hello, my name is Favor. Thank you for being here today. So earlier you talked about how you've learned to be a strategist in certain spaces. So I'm personally, I'm wondering how you would balance that with also being an organizer in this spaces at the same time, because there's a certain committee I'm in on campus which is more of a strategist concerning Black history in Tennessee, and there's another one I'm in which is more of an organizing group, and I don't know how to sort of balance both things. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts on that are about.
Yeah. So I've also learned how to bring my worlds together. That's been another thing that's very helpful to me, because I have so many things that I do every day in all my businesses and all the organizations that I support. And so what I do is try to find ways that everybody can collaborate, right? And intersectionality is one of those terms that if you don't know, write it down, do your research on the term intersectionality. Kimberly Crenshaw is one who has, I wouldn't say she coined the term because there was a woman before her, but she certainly has brought it to the forefront. And it helped us to plan and organize the Women's March, because there was so many different women who came from different backgrounds, different concerns. Some people cared about women's rights. Some people felt abortion was the major issue. Other people thought it might have been gun violence or whatever. And to get everybody in one room without taking our heads off, we had to use the concept of being an intersectional organizer. And, so the two spaces that you just described, hopefully there's room for you to plan and help them to have activities that helps the groups come together. One of the things that I found is whenever I do that, I build stronger forces, if you will. So when I get the anti-violence people that I work with that are very focused on getting young people, off the streets and trying to reduce violent crime, when I bring them together with the police accountability groups, it helps to strengthen the movements, because what happens is that the police accountability folks will basically sit down and say, okay, gun violence is not just one thing, right? Gun violence or violence in general is happening to our communities in lots of different ways. How do we work together, pool our resources together? That's what being an organizer is all about. We need resources. We need to expand the base of individuals who are showing up to address a particular issue. And so I'm able to wed, if you will, different areas of my life so that I'm not having 40 meetings, but instead we're growing and we're building and we're learning more about one another's concerns. And then therefore, when we show up, instead of it being 20 of us, now it's 40, and the 40 people are now aware of 3 different concerns because there's 3 different types of people in the room. Because the truth is that it's all the same issue. Right, we're all fighting against oppressive systems and really fighting for there to be equity and justice, right? That's what we're all fighting for. The more we learn about our interchangeable ideals and issues, the only thing that does is strengthen our movement. So I think that will help save your mental space and your running back and forth between groups, but it also will help you to build a stronger force.
Thank you.
Oh, this young man right here wanted to ask something.
Down front.
So I think I speak for a lot of us, a part of the NPHC Council. I remember when you said how it's so easy for us to get together and make baskets and all of that good stuff, which is so like funny because we actually did that, and we took the pictures.
Keep
and
making baskets.
And to a certain point, we are helping a certain group of people. But I think hearing you speak and just hearing different speakers throughout this civil rights conference, it's encouraged me, to encourage myself and my brothers and other people of like the MPHC Council to just get more involved in like things that like really matter and things that really affect us. Because I was talking to Dr. Joyce Washington earlier, and I said like now in our day and age, like we really just a bunch of social media warriors, which is cool, because a lot of things happen on social media and a lot of positive messages, are shared over social media, but there's so much more that we can do than reposting certain things or getting on there and ranting about certain things or advocating for certain things. Like it does help to a point. But I think at a collegiate level, there are a lot of us who want to get more involved, but we just don't necessarily know where to start. Yeah. So how would you recommend, like that we do that?
So one, baskets are important. Just make sure we know that there are people who need those baskets. I watched a young man on Instagram yesterday that it was his 42nd birthday, and he bought 42 sandwiches, 42 pairs of sneakers, 42 whatever, and instead of him receiving gifts, he went around and gave out this stuff to people who needed it, and particularly folks who are houseless. And so baskets are important. I want to push you on one thing. When the newest cell phone comes out, the newest Jordans, the newest anything that we want, we figure out how to go get it. We'll stand in line. We'll get on the email early. I was on there trying to get some of Beyonce's sneakers from some Adidas thing, and they were like, you got to download an app and do a thing, and I was all into the process. Eventually, I was like, okay, no. Because I got through everything, and it said, now you got to wait until 10 a.m. and then log back in, and I was like, all right, they lost me. But I was into the process to get these orange sneakers that came out. And what that tells me is it becomes an excuse when we say we don't know where to start. We know where to start. We just don't have the will to do it. Because when we have the will, we will figure it out. We will figure it out every time. We're going to be like, we're going to go talking to 5 people. You know who on this campus knows what to do. You know who in your family is the one that everybody be like, oh my God, here she comes. She always want to talk about voter registration and this and that. That's what they do to me. I look at social, like Facebook pictures of my family and friends, and I'm like, when did y'all had a dinner? Like, what happened? I didn't get invited. And they're like, yeah, you just be too much sometimes. Like, we wanted to just have a good time, and you gonna come in there talking about, did Pookie get registered to vote? They don't want to hear it. But the person in your life or in your family that does that. The pastor, it. It's about taking the step to go ask. And you might find that person doesn't have exactly what you need. But every time you leave a conversation, you're going to be more knowledgeable. You're going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, that sound good. Oh, you say, okay, go over here. You know what? Y'all got the internet in your hand. Use it. Research. Who are the local organizations, whatever city you come from? You can find ways to get involved. And I promise you, when you show up in most spaces, like, do you guys have an NAACP chapter here? Okay, so when you show up in most spaces, they need help. They like, whew, thank you. I'm glad you came. Who said something? Amen.
Miss Joyce Washington, raise your hand.
Yes.
Raise your hand, Miss Joyce Washington.
Yes.
Everybody knows Miss Joyce?
Yes.
You need to know Miss Joyce Washington if you're in Northwest Tennessee.
Yeah. You are an asset. And you have to, that's the other part about it. Brother, I want you to see yourself as an asset to anything that you get involved in. Because once you see that, and once you feel that way, it informs your confidence like, oh, I want to help make change. Okay, there's nobody doing it. Well, we're going to do it. We're going to start it right now. We don't like XYZ thing that's going on. I'm going to get 5 people. We're going to sit down. We're going to discuss it. We're going to do some research. We're going to go to Miss Washington. We're going to go wherever we need to go to figure out what to do. But we cannot allow ourselves to say we don't know where to start, because you know where to start. I know you already know, because the fact that you even asked the question, you are one of the ones that if nobody else in this room knows where to start, it's in you. You are the start.
You better stop preaching. You better stop preaching.
Yeah, you the start. It's right there. It's right there. You are the start. You just got to do it. You just got to do it, and you got to be like, you know what? This is an issue that's important to me, and I want to figure out what I could do to impact change in this area. And as soon as you make that decision, I promise you remember I said this, and DM me and tell me. When you make the decision that this is what I care about and I want to get involved, every single thing you need is going to just start falling around you. You're going to be like, oh, shoot, I ain't even know. Oh, I could talk to, you down for that too? And it's just going to come together. You just have to know it and then speak it with your mouth in the right rooms around the right people, and all the pieces will fall in place. But don't say you don't know where to start. Just think of yourself as I'm the asset and I'm the starter.
Any more questions?
There's a whole group right there. I wish somebody in that group would ask one question.
In the middle?
Yeah, right there.
Middle section back
The
there.
middle section.
Don't be
right?
scared. I know
It's a
y'all texting each
question.
other questions
It's a question
and comments.
right there.
Give us one. Give us one.
She's got a question right on the end. See, I see her. She's looking. Yep, you looking around. I know you have a good question. No, anybody, everybody, all the questions.
In that little group right there. Yeah, come on.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
Okay. So, as a parent, you talked about how you sacrificed a lot of the things with your child. What would be your advice on that aspect, on the work that you do?
Yeah, man. I tell you, boy, after all of this time, if my son was sitting here, he would be like, she don't know. She don't know. She does not know. Because even with my granddaughter, I'm like, wow, I haven't seen her, I haven't spent enough time even with her. And I have the guilty thing beginning all over again for a younger baby, because it's so hard. But I am more intentional. That, the other night I called him. I'm like, let's go out to dinner together. And my son's like, oh, we doing this and that and the third. And I was like, okay, well, don't worry about it. I'll be fine. And he called me back like, we going out to dinner, Mom, because he knew that I was trying, to see them and to spend time with them. So I think you do have to be intentional. But what I would say, and this ain't, people not going to like it and they're not going to want to hear it, but it's true. I wouldn't rush to have kids either when you're young like I was. I was 18. I have friends that 24, 25, same problem. They were not able to be as present for their children. I would not rush to have kids at such a young age when you're trying to find yourself and get your career going, right? I would try to wait a little bit later in life so where you can balance things out a little bit more. But I didn't have that luxury. And it was because I moved so fast and I made decisions that was life-changing. And I made decisions as a woman believing that there would be a father forever and we would share the responsibility, and then he was dead. So
The reason I ask is because I personally have 3 kids and I am married, but I'm still just now getting into social work and figuring out who I am and how I want to play a part in this. So
you're already down the road where I was.
Yes.
But I would say that whatever you're doing, and I'm not the best person in this area, I would admit, but just from my experience, I would say whatever you're doing, just know that it's gonna be there when you get back. Like, I promise you. And that's the thing that I was so afraid of. Like, if I get up from this desk, like my papers are gonna evaporate or something. Everything is just gonna disappear, and it doesn't. Like, you come back and the same pile is sitting right there waiting for you to get back in it, and eventually you start wishing that the pile would evaporate, but it doesn't go anywhere. And you just have to always keep at the forefront of your mind that this is going to be here. These problems, I'm not the beginning nor the end. And it will be here when I get back. So I'm going to leave it so I can focus on my family, focus on my children. You know, nowadays, life is just like this. You got, you know, I have a friend who I think a lot of people know, Delicious, who is on social media, and her niece was in Michigan State when the shooter came in and she was shot and killed. This is a young girl, 19 years old, and she's just gone from her family. And I know that there's, you know, somebody who probably feels like, damn, I didn't take that call, or, you know, I didn't call her, I didn't spend that time with her. So I try to do that. I try now at this age, especially as more of an accomplished individual in my work, I try to, when I see a call coming in, before my family couldn't reach me, they would be calling me and I would just be declining and getting mad, like, stop calling right back, and I'm trying to, you know, have this conference call. Now I'm like, hey guys, I'll be back. Let me go see what's going on with my mom. Let me go see what's going on with my dad. My mom, she was a dancer. She had 7 different dance classes that she taught. The men, the youth, the seniors. It was in her community. My mom has a video online that has 80 million views of her leading a dance class, a line dancing class. She was light on her feet, amazing. My mom had a stroke in March of 2020. Lost capacity on her left side. Now, you know, she's in a wheelchair and has to have, you know, 24-hour support. So just like that, she could have died. She was in a coma. She could have died. It just happened so fast that the one thing I learned is, like, I need to make sure that I don't have regrets, you know, with my own family whenever the time comes, that I want to be able to say, I did the best that I could. It doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I did the best that I could.
Thank you.
Let's hear from some brave soul. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Question for my group of students over here that would not. They are future teachers, and I'm proud that they're here. What would you suggest for our future teachers that will help make a difference and make a change for our students to meet the needs of everyone?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm glad you asked that question, and it's really powerful, and I think that, you know, just the mere fact that you're thinking that way is really important. We're sitting in a time when it's not hard to figure it out, right? Where people are trying to stop us from learning and teaching and learning about different perspectives, and specifically about African history. Not African American history, but also African history prior to enslavement. And when you understand that a group of people, because this is not something that we're making up, like the truth is that we as African people built America. We literally did. And when you understand that, it helps to humanize people who folks have dehumanized. When you know that these folks, like, their blood, sweat, and tears literally make up the foundation of this nation, and you actually teach that to the world, now we become more human, right? We become candidates for compassion and support and love and partnership in the fight for justice. And I think that every single educator, which includes parents, right, and community, because we're all educators, but every single educator in this moment when history is under attack and African American studies is under attack, must find a way to teach it anyhow, right? That's a protest. It's teaching it anyhow, whatever you have to do, making sure that your students are getting the knowledge. Because here's what I know. I know that people like Governor DeSantis and all of these individuals who want to ban education, and by the way, as whoever's taping this, Tamika Mallory is saying this. This is not an opinion of the institution, it's my own opinion. But those individuals, I think they know that at some point Black folks, we're going to learn a little bit about ourselves. Like, it's going to be a big mama, a teacher, somebody in the church. There's going to be the, Afrocentric Sundays. It's going to be somewhere where you get a little bit of information. Somebody's going to give you the autobiography of Malcolm X. Somebody's going to maybe give you State of Emergency. You might see me on social media. I might be in a bikini today, and then you follow me for that reason, and then tomorrow you learn about some other historical issue, right? Because I do that. I do that too. So they know we will touch a piece of it somewhere, for the most part. What they don't want is for white children to learn their history. Because it's not just Black history. It's American history.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's American history. It's American. I will never forget, during the second term, or the second attempt at becoming president for Donald Trump, Kellyanne Conway, who was the, whatever she was, a PR, no, what was she? She wasn't the speaker. Kellyanne Conway was the press secretary. And she was, and maybe you all remember this, her daughter was on TikTok. Killing her, just walking around the house like, look at my mom. My mom is a hypocrite. My mom supports a sexist, a racist, a fascist. My mom is no good. She was just tearing her mother up. Her mother started fighting her on camera one day. It was a whole thing. And I bet you somewhere along the line, whether it was in her school or in her community, she came into contact with somebody who told her, here's all the reasons why what's happening is wrong. And so when people are educated, when they receive information, you can't leave it the same way that you walked in, right? And now you feel like, man, damn, I'm working, I work at the bank, I'm in the human resources department, I'm gonna do things a little different. They don't want that. They don't want you to be able to get a loan to buy a house. They want you to be the animal that, if we let you in our community, the community is gonna go down. That's what they teach. But if they learn something otherwise about us, it will make people approach us with more sympathy and empathy. And so I would say that find a way to get the information, not just to Black students, because we're bombarded with information and being told who we are, what we need to do, and no. But there are white students who need the information more than anything, because the younger we can get them, the more we can depend on a new generation and new energy to be in our society. But without the information, you can't even hold them responsible for what they don't know.
Okay, I think we have one here.
I know how to talk. That's one thing. So.
Hi. I'm white, obviously.
No.
I know it's a surprise. I personally am very comfortable with how, the words that we talked about, white supremacy and racism, they don't make me uncomfortable. How do I go about making other white people comfortable with those things and helping to be the support that Black women and just the Black community needs?
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for even asking that question and wanting to do that. In my book, I talk about the need for not just allies, but accomplices, right? Allies are cool. Those are people who are like, yeah, I believe in your cause. And every now and then I'm gonna say it, but then I'll put it down and I could go home and turn it off. Accomplices are like, if you get in trouble, I'm getting in trouble with you. We going down together over this issue for a good cause, for a good reason, right? Accomplices get uninvited from family functions just like I do, right? You wanna be the type of person that at family functions, they decide maybe we don't want her to come today, especially if they plan on being racist or saying things that they know you're not going to be okay with. You have to be the person in the room that folks are like, I know if I call somebody out their name, or if I start spewing a bunch of negative stereotypes about a particular community, if no one else, what's your name again?
Skylar.
Skylar's gonna say something. Skylar's gonna be the one to call it out. Skylar's gonna ask the tough questions. It's not always a comfortable space, but I promise you that the white women that I work with that have your intention, they are much happier than they were when they were sitting around quiet in rooms knowing that what was being discussed was wrong. So that's, I think, the support that we need is not always something we can see. It's the work that you're doing when you're not even in rooms with us that is really what transforms society. Because I can't go to your family function and talk to, some of your people who have issues. I can't do that. I'll never be able to get into that room. But you're in there. And when I give you information and they say believe black women, believe me about what we experience. Believe me about it so much that you're able to articulate it in your world. And don't leave your world. Stay. Don't say, oh, because that's another thing. I know a lot of white women that are like, oh no, my family, they're so crazy, I've left that. I can't deal with it. My grandmother, she doesn't like Mexicans and this and that. And they're like, I'm with you. No. Visit me, but live there. And tell the truth everywhere you go. Tell the truth. And just keep doing it, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you. I'm telling you, it does make a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I believe we have come to an official stop, sorta. I hope, on behalf of the Civil Rights Conference, that you leave here today more energized, engaged, and a little bit more uncomfortable than you've been in a while. We want to thank Ms. Mallory for her time. Want to thank Ms. Bilger for doing a wonderful job. And I'll turn it over. I think we have a presentation. Yeah, okay. So we're going to ask the Sisters of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated to come to the stage. They have a token. I'm going to turn the mic over to one of you and put you on the spot.
Those jeans are kind of thing I like. Yeah, where we get those from? Is that in the bag?
From Zeta Lambda, chapter of AKA, we just want to tell you thank you so much for coming and visit and presenting us with this important information. And here's a present. Would you like to take a picture? Of course I would. Let me take it out. Oh, you can if you would like to. Oh, yeah. No, you don't have to. Oh, okay, cool.